Hello, Dave Manor. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, Karen. How are you?
I'm hanging in there, Dave. Hanging in there.
Yeah, these are times for people to hang in tough because we are being tested. The system or this game that's going on out there is doing everything it can to grab our attention, to throw us off balance, to give us punishment and then a few months of reprieve and then more punishment. It's a bit
Yeah, well, it is.
like
They've got us in
training.
the shackles and they're whipping us. Whoosh, whoosh. Bit like that,
Yeah,
isn't it?
a bit like that, but they've taken from the Chinese torture techniques where you
Yeah,
where
twist,
you
burn,
you torture
burn, burn.
torture for a while and then give them a few days off so that they feel like they're like, oh, maybe it's not going to
Yeah,
happen,
oh,
and
thank
then
God it's over, yeah.
even though in your back of your mind you're like, they could come back, the sadist could come back, and then after a week you crush people's spirits by coming back and doing it all over again. And I think we're seeing that now. With the Omni version of everything that's been going down. It
That's
stands
the
for
nice thing
the new
about
version.
your little boy. He won't know all this at the moment, will he? It's not going to enter his psyche. So,
Well,
I wish I
it's
was your...
hard. It's hard for it. I think it's hard for it not to, because when you go to the shops here, we're in South Africa now at
Well,
the
yeah, I want you
moment,
to
and
explain that, Dave, because obviously when I last spoke to you, you were in England, and then you said you went to Portugal, and now you're in South Africa. So maybe you could explain just a little bit for people who know you.
14th of February 2016, I pulled my friend and Andrea into the garage, and I said, "Leave your phones behind. I'm having a conversation. Things are going crazy. I can see something massive coming down the line. We need to start preparing. Be like Noah." And so for a few years, I was working in that direction, and then, and it was always to kind of find ourselves, far more independent of the system than we have been. So it's been a bumpy journey because we didn't really have the finances to enable ourselves to step from one paradigm into another. And so we have been seeking that, 2 years on the road.
I remember talking to you,
Now,
and you were a gardener in London.
well, yeah, that's right, because I used to have a suit and tie job, worked at Westminster local government for many years, and then when I realized the nature of the game, I had to step out and find my own way. And a bit like Jesus, take that kind of like carpenter work with the hands thing. And, so I turned my hand to the things that I could do. I started making furniture from recycled wood, pallets, things like that, roof beams, and gardening, and a bunch of other things, actually, house cleaning for people, and doing whatever I could, to stay in a house that I could no longer afford, because I wasn't earning the sort of salary that I had previously. So that went on for a few years until it finally popped at the end of 2019. And we went on the road, and then a month after going on the road, we were, invited on the Globe Light tour, and we did a month on that tour through Europe. And then since then, in the end of 2019, we've been bouncing. And of course, we spent 3 months in Jason's camper van in 2020 during the first L down. And it's just been it's been an ongoing kind of journey of experience of finding our way, and
I bet you
it has
don't know
taken us to some interesting places.
if you feel African or English at the moment, though, because I often find that when you've lived a long time in another country, you're always going, well, in my town, in my place, but when you go back, it wasn't quite the way you thought, and then you get back there and you think, oh no, I like the other place better now. I have Danish friends that have done that. They said how wonderful Denmark is, and they went and lived back there, and they moved back here.
Yeah, there's a bit of that, and it swings both ways. I mean, obviously our formative years were here, but most of our adulthood was 27 years in the UK. So, it wasn't just like a homecoming like it might have been after 5 years, where your friends are still kind of in the same mindset and things haven't changed too much in certain ways. But of course, we live in times in which people are clinging to belief systems and dogmas that mean they're stuck in a particular paradigm. So even though I have come to a place where I grew up, I don't really have the network and support, and then flat Earth is almost non-existent. in South Africa. You know, it's not a thing here yet. So it's been, we're 6 months now since we arrived in South Africa, and we landed.
It's warmer where you are, though, isn't it?
The average temperature is much warmer. We've been staying in different parts of the country, and the climate is variable in different parts of the country. It is predominantly warmer, and although we're heading into summer now, obviously, and things are going to get super hot where we are. Possibly not as hot as it was last summer in Portugal. That was insanely hot, insanely
They
dry.
had snow the other day.
In Portugal?
Yeah.
Or in England?
Last week or something.
Well, there was snow. There was snow when I was on the mountains in Portugal last December. So it's not like, or even November. So it's not like it's it's that rare.
I think they're always trying
South
to
Africa,
pretend that there's this global thing going on. Global this, you've got to save the world. Global. And the only people I can find that are destroying it is them. Not us. It's not the people. It's the corporations and everything. They're just destroying this place we live on.
Well, I've had the good fortune to visit about 50 cities over the last 2 years, all told. And really, I find the same kind of thing, the same patterns, the same kind of people, the same sheeple, the same. It's really, the whole world has been homogenized, and the sort of homogenization under a single shared enemy, even if it's invisible, even if it looks like a germ or something, it doesn't matter. It's like we're being brought under like a sort of homogenous supply chain.
And the other bit that really upsets me, Dave, is that obviously there are channels that do this, but they go around to all the abandoned places, abandoned hospitals, abandoned schools, abandoned shopping centres, stadiums, you name it, train stations, towns, houses, mansions, you name it. There's masses. We're on the decline. It's like we're in the apocalypse now. Hospitals with all the files, with all their records in there, with bits of body still left in there. And they've been empty for 10, 20 years, and they have not cleaned the hospitals out. They just abandon them.
Wow. There's a lot of strangeness, and of course we know that the theatre that's been played out for the last year and a half, that has constrained and controlled pretty much every facet of everybody's life, even down to their
because
aspiration.
we're still in the Holy Roman Empire. That's why.
Yeah, so there's a bigger thing going on. I think it's like, obviously the Roman Empire and whatever sits behind that control system is playing out this thing, but it has to play out this thing. Like there's a timeline that it has to adhere to, and it's trying to, because we know, right? I mean, I don't know how much your listeners look into the electromagnetic universe theory, but for me, after the DMT and further research, everything is electromagnetic here. So, we know we have the ability to shape an electromagnetic bulb, a fluorescent bulb, by changing certain elements, and the same is true with the human, And I think there is an attempt to change elements within the human energetic aura, torus field system, such that it achieves a certain high. Let's say I'm going to say high end, but what I mean is what's the word I'm looking for? Like some kind of spiritual or esoteric thing that they're trying to control. And so that's why I say to friends or people when I'm talking to,
hospitals. They want hospitals because they want all our blood types. They want something from us, whether and there's quite a few blood types. They just seem to want us for something. That's what I think. I don't believe in hospitals like I did before. They don't know what they're doing. Most of the time.
When my father-in-law was dying a few years, 2-3 years ago, he was saying in his last week of his life, he started slipping in and out of consciousness, and he would come back and have periods of lucidity during the day and talk about things that he'd experienced during the evening. Now, we sort of weren't taking it as seriously.
I've heard that when you're dying, you often see your family members and things like this happen a lot more. Did he say that?
Yeah. But what he said that was rather troubling was that he called Andrea up in the middle of the night. Now, he's a sober accountant kind of guy. And he calls her up in the middle of the night, and he hadn't been using his phone for a good few days. By that point, he was so unwell, he wasn't touching his phone. But he finds his way to his phone and calls her from the hospital bed at midnight and says, "Please come and get me, Andrea. They're performing murder rituals here." And that's what he was seeing in his kind of strange state. And then another day, about 2 days later, he said, "Oh, a guy came and plugged into me and took my data." And these things, now we know that there is something esoteric, there is something more going on at the energetic level beneath us, around us, then we think that possibly these institutions have always been designed as means of taking certain energetic signatures from people, performing things
I just think that we're one dirty, great big experiment to them. They're trying any way they can. I watched one the other day where this guy was saying that obviously we know what Orange Agent does. They were spraying it all over the Vietnamese, and obviously
Orange.
Yeah, Agent Orange. But there was a biohazard. They brought that all back to America and were spraying it all over the people there. So whatever they were doing in Vietnam, they were doing in America as well. We're just one great big experiment to them.
Yeah, I mean, and so it plays into that idea that it's, like the movie They Live, that there is an other here, and that other is exploiting God's true creation. But
we're not here for very long in the first place. Why can't they leave us alone? As you get older, you realise that time is getting quicker. So the last so many years of your life are going to feel quicker than they were like your little boy. It'll feel like a long period of time, but it gets quicker. You suddenly think, what, that was 4 or 5 years ago? It feels like yesterday, That's what happens when you get older. But we're not here for that long. Why can't they just leave us alone so we can live our lives?
Yeah, that's a great question, Because in my mind, it should be like in the ideal world, we should be given the sort of knowledge at the outset and say, look, this is who you are, this is where you come from. You can choose to do whatever you like, but there is a higher purpose to this existence, But this is a slave farm. This is Shawshank Redemption we're living through.
Yeah, it's like an open air boot camp, isn't it?
I don't know. Yeah, and I don't know if and when humanity is meant to rise from it, or whether this is just like a soul farm and that we come here for soul lessons. And until enough of us have learned these lessons, then we're going to continue screwing each other in the back by the sorts of things that we participate in.
Everybody needs to turn their television off, though. I've got a video that I'm going to put out. It might have gone out by the time this one goes out, but it's called Metaverse. So it's a fake 3D virtual reality place where you can buy things. They just want us now into that kind of world where everything is not real in the first place. They've destroyed this one, so now they want us in a virtual one. And it's about making money.
I don't think that they've destroyed this world, though. Yeah, I don't think they've destroyed this world. I don't think humans can destroy this world.
Do you know what? 3/4 of Detroit is rotting away.
That's a different, no, that's because I don't think that they can maintain the infrastructure that they inherited. I think that's part of the problem is that we inherited things we can't even maintain, and our inner cities are decrepit. I visited Detroit in 1988, and it was already an area that no one really wanted to go to business in. Now, you could go to Durban City, where I was. There's some videos of it. I actually just 2 or 3 weeks ago walked around the old City Hall, which is for us what we would call Tartarian type, that kind of construction where some of it appears to be sunk into the mud, windows at street level, all of the usual telltale signs, and the grand structure and so on. And those buildings in the center of Durban are all run down. They've got homeless people living in the
well, there shouldn't be any with the amount of buildings there are empty. There should be nobody living on the road, on the street. Nobody. There's too many buildings.
But the whole, that requires a retooling of the entire way that we, set ourselves up. And actually, what actually what it comes down to is that we feel like we're broken when we're children on purpose. We're hurt, damaged, stabbed with needles in the foot, conditioned, schooled, brainwashed, all of these things on purpose, so that we will never feel compelled to live in a way that would be so egalitarian, so equal. So what we do is we wound ourselves when we get wounded when we're young, and then we become dependent.
Do you know how they know? Do you know how it is? I think what it is, say your little boy, he could still be in it, because when I was looking at it, it was about the age of 7 it stops. Up until that time, a child believes that everything is real, and then it starts, why, no, why, and then it starts asking questions. So when you believe, when the child believes everything is real and they're watching it on the fake TV, then they're going to believe everything's real, and that's how we get damaged. Because we believe things are real when they're not.
Yeah. So it's with that damage that we enter business, or we enter homelessness, or
Hello.
3 people over the last few months here in South Africa, is that people actually need to be empowered in themselves. Like, you can give these guys a handout, you can give them a free council home or whatever, but that doesn't address the fundamental thing. I saw it when I was young in the UK, young mums with council homes. It doesn't make them a great mum, it's only a start on the journey, and of course we're entitled. It's really incredible that to have to fight for a home.
We're 2021, and we're still facing all the things we can see in the old pictures. The people look poor, they haven't got proper housing. That was like 150 years ago. Nothing's changed. We're still fighting the same battles. Oh, we haven't got enough money for this, and we haven't got enough money for that. Well, when you start watching the abandoned channels, when they go around all these places, there's masses of things. They've left it.
Yeah.
So it's the complete opposite of what they're telling you. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. I'm almost speechless. I just don't have words for it anymore.
Andrea's on the edge of her seat. She wants to join in the conversation.
Hi, Karen.
Hello, Andrea. Hi. How are you? Long time no speak.
Yeah, I'm okay. It's been a wild ride, yeah, and still continues. Just from my perspective and some of my journey, and the sort of way that my research and my journey has taken me, is to look at childhood trauma. And when we say trauma, people always think of like a cataclysmic event that happens in someone's life, something major. And actually, that's not true. Childhood trauma is often developmental. So things like,
well, make it like, for instance, we've got one as adults, like 9/11. That's in our history bed now, and everybody probably knows what they were doing on that day, and that's the fake history we now have.
I think the greater trauma is that children are forced to kind of almost strip and, to be searched when they go to the airport and all these sorts of things. So it makes you used to the idea that you live in a police state where there's threats and bombs and all that.
So I need to peel it back much before then, because that we're talking very much about the external world. But if your internal world is dysregulated from day 0 or even before, then your starting point is one where you already hold emotional energies in your body, of being abandoned, of feeling unsafe, and these things happen developmentally, and it's the way that mothers have been taught that they have to mother. In fact, I think that they purposely broken the mother, and that all the mother stands for. Because actually
it's a womb. The mother's the womb, and that's it. Because they usually send their children to I don't mean it horribly, but we're taught today: go to work, children go to the childminders. So you're not looking after your own children.
Yes, but because the society is set up that way. So to be fair to mothers, we've got a pretty broken the lineage is broken, actually, if I look at my own. And what happens is, like, for instance, here's something that I did with my 2 older kids. I was taught to do control crying, so that when your baby has to go to sleep, you will you're told by the medical field or the midwives or whatever that you must leave the baby to cry because they need to learn to fall asleep on their own. Well, that's not true. Actually, now if you look at people are looking at trauma in children, that could even be considered child abuse because a baby has no way of self-soothing. It relies completely on its mother to regulate its nervous system. And if you let a child cry and cry and cry, well, actually what they're telling themselves is no one's coming. Not, oh, my mother's just leaving me to cry because I need to learn to fall asleep on my own. And they'll cry and cry and cry, actually, till no one comes. And that, now, they know it's already, people have been doing research on this for a very long time, and it's not.
So I've got an answer for that one. I think it's something Hardy up there. It's called I'm okay, you're okay. So when a baby's born, it doesn't feel okay. It needs you, and then it feels okay. And there's these different stances in life. The next one is, I'm not okay, and you're not okay, and I'm okay, but you're not okay. All those are the wrong stance, because it should be, I'm okay, you're okay. But if any of those first three are there when a child is young, that is how they grow up the rest of their life. Either I'm not okay, or you're not okay, and that's how they deal with the world. And it's all embedded in you when you're little.
Yeah, so what I'm trying to say is that actually there isn't anybody who doesn't have that. We might have a spectrum of that. There might be people who have got more or less trauma. But actually, I think that everybody walks around with trauma because of the generations that we've got to in terms of mothering. And hey, I'm not digging out mothers. Mothers are doing the best they can with what they know.
Yeah, and some of your mothering is taught from your mother as well.
Exactly. And if I just look at my own lineage, if I don't just look at my own mothering lineage, you know, the stuff that was put upon, whether it be that was going on in the outer world, you know, whether it be the poverty or having to go to work, or what women were culturally told was what they were expected of them, the demeaning of being a mother at home. And you know, you'll hear moms say all the time, oh, I'm just a mum. Wow. As a society, we should be saying, you know, put the mothers up there, because actually we need good mums. We need mums that are healthy and
but you know what? A lot of society today is narcissists. They're all narcissists. That's it. Once you're a narcissist, you can't help a narcissist. They are narcissists. And our society is very... We're not violent, but we're narcissists. And you don't want that in your little boy, do you? You want him to grow up as an empath almost.
So let me just throw something in here. We did a series of videos earlier this year where we were researching the nervous system, and we realized that, well, firstly, there's a group of people in society who insist on circumcising boys when they're about 8 days old. And I think that pain, that trauma, causes a mental break that causes some kind of psychopathy later in life. Then we realize that when we're all born, since the 1960s, we're given the heel prick test. And the heel prick test is done right into the center of the heel, which is where the sciatic nerve ends in your foot, and that sciatic nerve runs right up into your groin and connects to the vagus nerve complex. But actually, your groin is where in the Vedics and so on, with the chakras, they say your groin is your lower chakra. It's your root chakra, and your root chakra is responsible for your sense of well-being and your groundedness, safety, and these sorts of things. So if at the moment of you leaving the cocoon and protection of your mother's womb, you get this incredibly sharp pain run right up into your groin and upset the most important part of your stability, then from the moment you come here, you are wounded, and that wounding causes a damage psychologically that we can never really quantify because it's so small a tweak. and it happens at such a young age that you can never notice the change.
Well,
so we in this case with Alexander, we refused any of those stabbing attempts by the medical profession when he was born, because we didn't want to. We already knew then these were unnecessary interventions and unnecessary woundings that would only perhaps cause him later trouble. So yeah, maybe that's why we become the people we become, because we are destabilized and we are not given mothers who in the main are those nurturing mother elephants, and perhaps we're not given role models in fathers that we should, because
and
it's
also,
all go get the best car and the biggest paycheck.
Oh, sorry, I know that Andrea wants to talk, but I've got this whole section with James. He lives in New Zealand, and what he's worked out is that anxiety is a political tool. And so they use that and they make money out of it, and they play with the game, they play with the words, and they just want us in stress all the time. And very often when people think that they're giving wisdom, they're not. They're just giving other people their anxiety, not wisdom.
Yeah.
That is just so true. He works all that out. It's all done through the education system. Sorry, Karen.
Well, actually, it is, but I think we have to there has to be some ownership here. This is where I'm at. I'm a mother. I've been conditioned. I've been wounded. And there's a saying in the sort of trauma healing community, and that is, it's not my fault, but it's my responsibility. To be sovereign, have to be accountable and take responsibility for whatever my wounds are. I may not be the one who put that conditioning on me, and I can, and I have done. I can blame my mother, and just by the way, I had a fairly normal childhood. Most people look at my child and think, what are you talking about? But there were moments in time. One of them being when I found out recently when I was born, the practice then was to take the baby immediately away from the mother. So I never got to be held by my mother at all after birth, and then was taken to the nursery for 6 hours. And now in a baby's ward, you've just been ripped from your mother. You just come from their womb. They are your only sense of safety and security and regulation at that point. And you're taken from them. And that rupture, that trauma, will then leave an emotional signature in your nervous system. And every time that's triggered again and again, you will re-experience that original trauma.
I understand that,
which
Andrea.
As a baby, we know.
Andrea, when I was born, I wasn't a very healthy. There's so many things wrong with me. I had yellow jaundice, whatever. I was premature. I was tiny, and they took me away, and I was in an incubator for a month. So nobody cuddled me, so I understand that.
Wow.
Yeah, and so and that's you. But you being premature, but I wasn't, And so there's practices that have been going on.
That's what I'm saying. They just take the children away. Yeah, I agree.
I can blame my mother, but actually those emotional signatures that are in my body, only I can heal. I can't.
So we've been traumatized, we've been wounded. We need to kind of recognize that and.
But you know what? The biggest thing is you've got to know who you are as a person. Once you know who you are as a person, when that comes to you, whether you're 20 or 40, then life changes. Once you know who you are. If you don't know who you are, you're never going to agree with anything. You're going to disagree, and you're never going to be sure about anything. So you need to know who you are as a person inside, and then life changes.
Well, my most powerful message that I've found people getting emotional on the beachfront and on the streets talking to people, the most powerful message is this is one of that, whatever creator essence you believe in, that creator essence is in the small, is in you, is you. And when you know that you walk with, you carry the light of whatever creator is here, and that the creator intended for you to walk this path, and let your light grow, let your light shine. then that's a truth that the material world never really wants you to kind of know. The religious world never really wants you to know. The science world never really wants you to know. And I give this message to people, and they say to me, man, I've spoken to lots of preachers and lots of people over the years, and none of them have made me feel the way that this message has made me feel in my heart. And I think this is because all the stuff that we do to look out there and blame the system and look at all the next,
well,
the next
for a
horror
long
show
time,
coming down
even
the train.
like what Andrew's just said, okay, she's realised different stuff now and she's going to bring up your little boy differently. But we all believed in it as we were growing up. We didn't know any different. We don't now, but we did then. We believed in that system. And then when you take a look at it, it's horrible.
But what does it mean once you know?
But I think let's be honest. We talk about truth and the truth out there, but actually this is about finding out your own truth. And for some, or for many, that's hidden behind a whole lot of conditioning. I'll tell you a story about living in South Africa. I grew up in the apartheid era, and in 91, when Nelson Mandela took over and whatever, I just finished school, and I thought I wasn't racist at all, and went and lived in the UK for many years, and then we returned this year, and I realized that I had this unconscious feeling of, whenever I came towards a man of color, a particular man, that I would feel a certain amount of anxiety, fear, around that. And then I came across a woman about 2 months ago, similar age to me, and she said to me, did you know that actually in the 70s and 80s they were flashing like subliminal screenshots on television of black men attacking white women? And you wouldn't know because you never saw it. But this has come out, and of course I didn't know it. And for me, that was that light bulb moment. It's like, shit, I was conditioned without even knowing it. And that goes with even being a baby and being taken away for 6 hours. I have no memory of that. I have no cognitive memory of that, but it sits in me as a conditioning. And it's those lenses and those layers that have to also be peeled back to get to the truth of who you are. And I think that's why we see what we're seeing in the bigger picture going on at the moment, is that we don't want to go and do that inner work, because a lot of it's quite painful. We want the outside to fix. We want the outside to get better. This must change, that must change. But really, ultimately, it's us, and it's the lens we see through. And and Dave talks about telling these people about that they've got, that they are this divine being. And actually, I think what happens is, through the conditioning or whatever, we get separated from that knowledge, our inner knowing that we are these light beings. We are these incredible light beings, and our light is diminished through the conditioning and the shadows that we carry. And that's what I think this time is. This time is about everything coming out from the shadows. And that's why for those people who can already see, it's maybe more obvious than...
Yeah, and do you know what? There's three yous. There's three yous, Andrea. There's who you think you are, who you want to be, and how other people see you are. There's three yous. It's crazy.
Mm.
But... you've got to be happy in your own. You've got to be happy in your own skin. You've got to.
Yeah, I think for me that's the ultimate, isn't it? It's really it's that inner peace, that inner bliss,
and mastery, if I may say, because I made up this flyer. Just 5,000 copies, and I'm most of the way through them. I've handed almost all of them out by face to face to people, and in it I spell universe, YOU, universe, because you are like the hub of this wheel, the spokes of our experience with family, with history, with science, with religion or spirituality. All these things are elements of that. Business, all these things, relationships. And, you know, you are the master of that. It is your universe, and it should be you that determines the course and the tempo and all these things of your universe. Of course, we live in a pretty crazy world that demands its own sort of tempo and pound of flesh and all that sort of thing. And that's what I think, if we're trying to move away from that into something more you-centered, then we have to find different ways of, well, firstly, understanding who we are, you know, and coming to that kind of realization of centrality of like, shit, this is my experience. This is my, you know, it's meant to be my gift from God, from Creator, from nature, whatever, you know. So it's my gift, and I'm meant to be having the best experience of it. And how do I do that? Well, I do that by balancing the wheel, because if the wheel is unbalanced and I'm too focused on one segment of the pie of the wheel, then that wheel isn't going to run smoothly for me. And that's why I think, like, in Truth Community, we end up sort of focusing an awful lot on certain parts of the wheel and forget the hub, forget the, you know, the you in the middle of the universe. And so it's great to have all this insight.
Sorry, from here, it came through churches as well, but we always have to be in sin for something. You know, he's always in penance for something. Something's always wrong.
Okay.
And
I've got a great way of looking at that.
Ultimately, it isn't really. If you know who you are as a person, there's nothing wrong.
Well, you know, you're not about wrong. So
you know, they've done it
as
heal the shame that binds you. That's what Andrea is going on about. Get rid of all that shame, the whole thing, all has to go.
Okay, so let's think of sin as sine wave. And the sine wave is, if you've got your center line, your plane of inertia, if you like, your center line, and then you've got this kind of sine wave going up and down below the center line. And when it goes down below the center line, it enters into the red zone. The red zone reflects the lower chakras in the being. And then when it crosses through up the center line and back up into the sky, if you like, into the blue zone, it enters into the higher zone. Now, the higher zone is a reflection this is my theory. The higher zone the blue zone is a reflection of the sheep, and the lower zone, the red zone, is a reflection of the ego. The goats, which is kind of ego. The word goat and ego they are this similar word, egoat. I think they have the same origin. And so the goats and the sheep are both necessary in the farm, you know, but goats have a different requirement than sheep. And the sheep are, in this analogy, people who are perhaps more willing to kind of go along, and the goats are those who are more willing to kind of drive the agendas and the ego. And actually, I learned recently that farmers often use a goat or goats to lead sheep to the slaughter, because sheep will follow the goats and they will trust the goats. But if you're running the farm, you know that the goats need a little bit of wild field to run about, some mountains to kind of have freedom. You don't have the same paddock and all of them together in the same little bunch as the sheep. But you individually have both the sheep and the goats in play. And the Bible says to you should be the good shepherd. The good shepherd is going to manage the goats and the sheep. So the good shepherd will not allow the goats to run amok, i.e. let the ego, let the lower, the red, the sexy, all the stuff that's down in the lower chakras, all that stuff run dominant, run amok, because if you do, then your farm is going to be overrun with, with that behavior. And equally, if you allow if you have all of these sheep, the whole thing is just everybody meekly following, the goats into the slaughterhouse, then that's also going to be a problem. So for each of us, we need to manage our goats and sheep. Now, if the sine wave for an individual is freaky high and low, they might be called bipolar, because it's super, like, I'm now the most vegan, spiritual person on earth, to, I'm just just trashing myself and trashing everyone around me kind of thing on the other end of that spectrum. And the sins of our father is that we often pick up these vibratory signatures and experiences from our parents, and so our behaviors are often a reflection of our sins of our father, or the sign of our father.
Yeah, because you're not authentic anymore. You have an authentic self, and most people don't realise they lose that in all those things that happened when you were a child and the things you believed. But you have to get back to your authentic self.
Well, your harmonious self. So to bring those sine waves, rather than being sharp peaks and troughs, to bring them into more gentle, kind of mellow, undulating fields, if you like, of sometimes I'm a little bit blue, sometimes I'm a little bit red, or most of the time I'm green. I mean, most of the time I'm center, because I think that's what we're called to become, is the neutral observer. And the person who's not is that person who's super involved in the blue stuff, whether that's the church stuff or spiritual stuff or your eco warrior or whatever, versus maybe someone who's, I'm just it's stereotyping here, but someone who's completely into porn, or completely into like getting drunk all the time, or all those vicey stuff down in the red. And it's not to kind of say those things are wrong, but they should really be in harmony. And so I keep saying this to fellow truthers, is like, you don't want to be lost in all your, all of that research, when ideally you've got to be finding your own neutral, your own earth. Earth is green in electricity systems, not red and blue, which is negative and positive. Green is earth. Earth is heart. Heart is the balance. The center of you is the heart. And actually, like the Christian cross, you have the up and down. So it's like the red chakra and the blue chakra, like I said, up and down the column, but you also have the left and right, and they keep us in these sort of left and right paradigms. Is this one good? Is this bad? All these sorts of things. So we have to think in a 3D way of ourselves as being the center point of a 3D cross, if you like. And not that I'm trying to, I can't, I'm not into iconography at all, but I think it is an interesting symbol, and it represents perhaps you, and the center point of you is both the balancing of the up, down, and the X and the Y axis of your spiritual and electromagnetic self. So that's my, thing, and because obviously I've been pushing certain truth stories, and I am trying to, do my part to help people see that there's mass of deception and brainwashing going on. I'm doing all of that, but I have to, and we did lose some of this along the way over the last 2 years of being on the road. Andrea doesn't like the term homeless, but on the road for 2 years, living out of a bag and not sure where you're going to be from 1 week to the next. It does rob you of that, but therein comes the discipline. You see, these are the disciplines that we were encouraged to take on board years ago. Like, there's something coming, and it's not just about putting bags of wheat and rice and tins of food aside, but it's about the inner work. We're realizing more and more that, they might be trying to mess with us in the material, but it's because they're trying to get at us at the spiritual. This whole hiding of our spiritual connection to creation, our centrality to it, and our sovereignty and divinity, and all of these things. They've been hiding this with all this obfuscatory nonsense about floating balls and Germans floating through the air that are going to be breathed in a moment's notice. So and people say at the very entry level of truth, it's like, so they want the money, they want my energy, they want my, but I think it's spiritual. And the more I am focused on one of the spokes of my wheel, the less smooth and the less close to a balanced sine wave or a neutral, ideally, sine wave I might have. So that's why I say that guys who spend their whole time sitting in the ashram, meditating and yogatizing their way through this, I think that's a little bit too much in the blue department, And those guys that just want to sort of party their way through this and go, that's a little bit maybe too much in the red department. And same too with truth research in a way. Truth research in a way is a kind of ego pursuit. It's a goat pursuit, I think. And
It's seeking.
And it's a seeking thing, and I think there's nothing wrong with. I'll say it again. There's nothing wrong with goats. There's nothing wrong with sheep. I think the farmer would want both in his flock. That would be a balanced farm, and those two animals together would provide you with so much. One has something that the other can't give. So we need the sheep. We need the goat. But we in ourselves have to be neutral, or we can go and join the sheep or the goats out there. But I'm suggesting that with all my consideration, experience, journey and all this, it's about finding that center of the cross in you and having it in a neutral place, so that through most of the experiences, ups and downs and good news and bad news that's coming from wherever, that we're meeting it with a neutral at a neutral place. Because trust me, the people who keep putting these false news thing, fake news or whatever in the media, they know that we know. They love that we're spending our time fixating on the bullshit that they're feeding people. I believe this latest thing, Omicron, is an acronym for moronic. Just a coincidence, I'm sure. But so anyway, so I think this is important for people to realize, is that yes, there's theater for those who are full asleep, and they call that EastEnders, they call that soap operas, and they call that WWE wrestling or Saturday sports or whatever. There's that kind of entertainment, and then there's the entertainment for those people that are part way through this journey with Alex Jones and what's that other guy who's so popular these days, Rogan, and then and so it goes through, and I've been kind of entertained by all of those groups along the way, and even now I kind of try and discipline myself not to spend too much time in niche research areas. I love that people are researching these things. I'm fascinated to see what people find and so on, but I cannot give myself over to a new soap opera, and that is, what happened in Tartaria, how did these mud fossils or these, titans and so on and so forth.
I actually mentioned you in one of my videos because you went to Chichester, you went to down by Worthing, you went to, forget.
Salisbury? No.
Lancing.
Worthing College.
Lancing.
Is it Worthing College?
Lancing.
Lancing College, yes. Oh my gosh.
And that's like, when you look at I think they're called. I'm going to come back to you, Andrea, because I know Andrea's not finished. I'll come back to you in a moment, Andrea.
No, she's not.
The Redoubt forts, they're built underground, and the church is underground. Like how so the Redoubt forts are built down, but how does a church, like it's called St Agnes Church, they took like all that soil off, and there was half a church under the ground with windows in, like there was glass windows that weren't what do you call it, they had not degraded, and the glass was still there. So how could that be? How does that happen? How can the earth come round a building and not crush it? We see tsunamis, the water washes the houses off. Surely the mud would do the same, but it doesn't. It just grows over the building. How does that happen?
Yeah, or it settles. It settles. If everything's electromagnetic, I imagine a vibratory tweak of the ether could render what we see as water in the sky could fall as sand. Is one of my theories, because often like you lose roofs. The original roof is gone. So that's one of my theories. Is that it's that.
What, and then it sort of petrifies.
There's a frequency change.
Then it's because.
And then, then it hardens in place. Yeah.
Because I've been following another guy called Our Melted Reality, and he's saying all the brick buildings, they're all burnt, all of them. They're in some degree of burnt, and what we see now is the leftover. So all the buildings have all been burnt. And so I think, wow. So it's the same sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's quite hard to know exactly.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Well, again, in electromagnetic theory, this ether could become anything, as Tesla has apparently said it. A handful of ether is enough to power a city. The energy in that. So if you have means of tweaking that, then it could become anything. And if you are into the theory that perhaps massive mountains were once trees, then the idea that you switch a button and then everything alters from a certain certain material to stone, for example. The story of Lot's wife turning to sand, a pillar of sand, and so on. Well, this might be a story of how some things are altered. So the ether, the water could be changed. I did once theorize that it could have come down as a snow, because oftentimes you find that you can go 2 or 3 stories down into a building I have in London. So did they excavate all of that, or was the innards of the building often spared because it wasn't water so much as it was something that settled perhaps from above. So yeah, these are all fascinating.
What, like dust,
for
like
me,
a volcano had erupted or something?
Yeah, that could be, that's one explanation. But you see similar sorts of things, and interestingly, like I've been on steep hills where there's a similar amount of settling on buildings as you go down the hill, which doesn't make any sense, because if it was water flooding down there, then the silt would naturally go to the lowest point. That's just generally how that would work. So you wouldn't, at the top of the hill, you would expect the village down below to be completely flooded with silt, and the one above to have very little silt damage if it was coming as a wash. But if it's coming from above and settling like snow, then you can imagine it building up in an even way across a sort of an incline road. Although I think if you think about Canterbury, the houses do seem to be deeper in the sand the closer you get to the river in Canterbury. But we have obviously looked at a lot of cities and a lot of places over the last few years since we became aware of this, Karen. And one thing's for sure is that this wasn't intentionally built in this way. How it came this way is obviously...
Well, there's millions of star forts now.
Yeah.
We've got millions of them now. There's more, suddenly all these pyramids were appearing, and now there's trillions of star forts.
It's amazing, hey? We don't really know if these things have never been joined up. The dots weren't joined up until people started kind of doing that. And if anyone's interested in star forts, the one in Cape Town it's known as the Castle. Is an interesting study, because there are images of it once upon a time being on the harbour. Then the story goes, in 17 something or other, or whatever, 1800, I don't know, they decided to move it 5 kilometers from the harbour inland. Now we're talking about a massive star fort with massive stone, and it's also sort of partially sunk in the mud. So we're meant to believe that they built this thing and then transported it just 5 k's up the drag to move it away from the harbour for some reason, right? My preference is that if you look at overhead aerial photos of Cape Town, there is an area known as the Cape Flats, and it is like what would be a wash of mud that came across the Cape and changed the harbour layout, changed the city layout, and put this fort now, once on the harbour, it now put it sort of 5 kilometers from the harbour itself. So that's one where it doesn't make any sense in terms of the story that we're told. And of course, it was designed to protect people from the locals had sticks. The local people were known as Hottentots, and they were numbered in their few thousand, perhaps at the most, and they fought. They didn't fight. They had spears for hunting impala and things like that to go and find food. That was wooden spears, and now we've got this fort that our modern cranes would struggle to move into place. to defend, in the 1600s, when people were there as a victualling station with just, a small port apparently with nothing going on, but they go ahead and build these. And of course, South Africa is replete with these Rhodes Memorial, as named as Rhodes Memorial, but it's, these things that are massive buildings that, again, it'd be like, these people are just barely able to survive out here. Look at the Africans today who are struggling out to get by. They live in these, awful little shacks put together with corrugated tin and what have you.
Starfort.
This is how people have to live today, who've got very little. So when those people back in that day also had very little, they had only horse and buggy at the best. They're going to be building these monumental, beautiful structures that we just don't bother to build them today. It's just not. We don't need to build things like that. But no, there's definitely, there are builders that went away. They had a skill that went away, and there's a unexplained burying of buildings across the plain in every city, pretty much every city I've visited over the last few years, and that numbers in
those
many.
things,
and in Italy,
like the Tartarian buildings, like the pyramids, are everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not like Tartaria for me has possibly got elements of like misdirection.
You can find the same buildings in India and China.
Yes.
I'm not saying there is many,
agreed.
but you can still find Tartarian buildings all the way there.
Yeah, I think I listened to Static in the Attic the other night talk about that the connection between all of these parts of the world and the Tartarian so-called empire is a little tenuous. So, one of the things we need to be cautious of is that these buildings are obviously there. They knew we were going to find these buildings and start connecting the dots. And what they would want to do, obviously, would be to flood the market with a lot of interesting and juicy kind of information, which we would spend
flood it with plastic,
millions of man hours, exercising ourselves rather than exercising ourselves. This is such an important thing. So spend an hour on Tartaria a day if that's what you love doing. But at the same time, it's like, are you spending 3 hours on yourself? Are you putting time into your own inner spiritual kind of journey? Because it seems to me, I say to Andrea, look, we don't know what's coming down the pipe. Tomorrow, an event could happen and change everything, or everything gets washed away. Just say, worst case scenario, where everything gets washed away. The question is, how ready were you? Had you done that inner spiritual work? Or were you still busy chasing the ring like Schmeagol in The Lord of the Rings? Are we still busy chasing that? Or have we actually gone, shit, there is a ring?
Do you and Andrew think you're more like empaths? Just asking.
You know what? I think as a female, I'm a more of a feeler than perhaps Dave, who is more the thinker. And I think that's the masculine and feminine, although we have that in both of us. But I think we're all empaths. Actually, the truth be told, I think we all have these, yes, some would argue, well, I know there's people who have come here with certain skills or purposes or whatever. And yes, I'm sure that's the case. But I think that that's the thing. When we're in our true being, when we're connected to our true self, when we're connected to our light within, then we're all those things. And perhaps this is where humanity has descended so far that Tartaria or the things being bigger or things being able to be manifest was way more possible when we were connected to that inner light. And all this that's gone on, has just brought us lower and lower and lower. That we're all kind of just sitting in those lower chakras. We're not. That's what ascension is, essentially, isn't it? It's moving, healing those shadows and then moving up. So I don't know. I don't know that we're specifically empaths. I think think
they've been trying to clear, like that story they say about the fluoride, calcifying the pineal. Well, obviously I can't verify that, but if I imagine that, and I imagine that other parts of myself have been calcified, then certainly from 2016, 2017 onwards, we were quite, eager to try and clean ourselves, mind, body, and soul. Haven't perfected it, but that has been an important part of our journey. And I think that the more we clean the light, the more we clean the lamp, the more the light will shine, and the more light can come in. So perhaps the more empathic one will become along the way.
Well, actually, I think it's getting back in touch with your feelings of your own, your true feelings, and so a lot of self-love.
Empaths are different, though. Empaths care about the whole of humanity, and a narcissist just cares about themselves.
This is my point. I think actually it's only, for me, a narcissist is only someone who has experienced conditioning and trauma. That's why I was going to say earlier, I don't really particularly like the word narcissist. I think that it's one of those words that people have taken and almost
it definitely
uses
explains
as
this illness that they are in. It's like an illness, but it's not actually a medical thing. But being a narcissist,
like a narcissist, I suppose.
You're quite mentally ill when you're a narcissist, because you don't.
But then we're all on a spectrum of narcissism then at the moment, because let's be honest, if I'm going to be standing my truth, I judge people. Even through this experience that we're going through now, when I'm out in public and I see people behaving in a certain way that I don't necessarily, wearing a nappy on their face, and I judge, and that judgment is a sort of an egoic thing that I have to say, well, look at you, you're not doing it the same way as me, so therefore you must be wrong and I must be right.
Andrea, breaking away from the globe life, it's not easy, is it? We're used to that. We've been programmed into that, and now we're reprogramming ourselves.
Yeah, because I think ultimately we all as human, when we're in our God self, then we are compassionate and loving, and compassion and loving isn't judging and condemning and having grievances, and actually all that does, in my opinion, is kind of numbs you or holds your light down if you carry that. So that's my point. I think we're ultimately all supposed to be on a journey back to actually caring about everyone, because the truth be told, the separation that happens through the trauma from your God self means that we see ourselves as separate. Therefore, I've got to judge myself against you, rather than actually
with you.
We're one. We're one, actually.
Yeah, it's the I'm okay, you're okay thing again. It's that back to I'm not okay, you're not okay, I'm okay, you're not okay, or I'm not okay, you're okay. You want to be I'm okay, you're okay.
Yeah, and the thing is, we identify so much with the body, right? And this body is just a vessel. It's just something that's carrying us. It's not actually who we are. People will say that even our personality is not who we are. Our personality is our conditioning. It's the lens that we've developed over time that we then live our lives through. And sometimes that's not truthful. It's part of the illusion, whether it be that, I dislike men because, my father wasn't emotionally available to me. I'm just using that as an example. But that's the personality. So we identify with that outside material human, but actually inside, I believe we're all this. And I say all with exception, right? I'm not going to go into that, but we're all this light. We're all this light. And when I had Zizi, I might have said this before, but when I had Zizi, I had this little song playing in my head. This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. And this is when I was in labor, and I was I was in a sort of transient state. And it's the bottom line. It's we come here to shine our light as bright as we can.
But something does try and dull it.
But there are things, absolutely, there are outside forces that are endeavouring to dull it.
So I think of all the poor people that have not.
I think
Think of all the poor people who've not even looked into any of this. I mean, it's not easy, is it? The more you wake up, the harder it is, because you suddenly realise that you're living in a complete lie. And you've got to then, like I said, it's like reprogramming yourself a bit and so forth. It's not easy, but at least we've taken the steps to try and do this. But the others, they're asleep, they're zombies, whatever, narcissists. They're never going to, they don't even know. They don't even care.
Well, I remain hopeful, actually, because I want to, I think that everyone needs that fair chance, and I think that if anything, this experience that the world's going through now is giving people the opportunity to make some choices, right, or see things differently, or grieve from. For me, the hardest part about finding out the truth about who and what and where we are is the grief, because actually everything that you knew, everything that you trusted, and that can come down to personal relationships, changes, because, it's all not what you thought it was, and that takes there's a process of grieving. And so yes, I think if everybody just woke up now, we think, oh yeah, everybody must just wake up now. Well, can you imagine? It would be really difficult. I mean, if I'm honest, I think astrologically at the moment, where the energies are kind of taking us through almost like a dark night of the soul for humanity, and everybody's having to have a look at themselves, whether they know it or not. And of course, you can distract yourself, or you can use whatever you use to stop yourself from experiencing that, including attach yourself to a narrative that suits you, or you can go and feel those uncomfortable experiences or emotions, and then move through it. But yeah, for me, the hardest part is coming to terms with, what for 48 years I've lived in this world of, and there's so many layers of truth. You start on the outside and then peel them all the way back, and then you eventually get to yourself, and you have to kind of.
Yeah, I wrote a poem about it. It's called "Why Be Afraid of Your Emotional Dealings." I wrote it years ago. Basically, your eyes are the windows into your soul,
But again, it's a conditioning thing, hey, because, I mean, boys mustn't cry, and, how many times my mother's generation, I've heard them say, oh, we just had to get on with it. After the war, after the Second World War, there was very much that, oh, you've all been through this horrible experience, and now you must just be grateful that it's over, and now we must get on with it. That was the kind of rhetoric or thing. And so my mother's generation is very much like, oh no, you don't want to go and look at that stuff, you must just get on with it, it's in the past. But it, the Dave always says, if you don't deal with the past, then the wake of the ship is steering your future or your present. And so it's an important thing. So yeah,
how are you finding being back in Australia, South Africa, by the way?
You know what? We've been away in the UK for such a long time. More than half of my life I've been in the UK. So, and actually, what happens is you kind of get conditioned by the country that you're in too. Because you're there for such a long time, and get used to the expectations of the culture that you're living in. So, yeah, it's been an interesting experience, and of course in a crazy time, yeah. So it's okay. It's okay. I can't say.
Do you miss the UK now?
You know what? I have my
Except the
two older
weather.
kids there. I have the two older kids there, a 20-year-old and 22-year-old, you know, in uni and in work, and you know, I'm, you know, we miss them terribly, and so that's kind of a difficult one. And of course, as of today, South Africa has been put back on. Well, not as of today, but as of today, you have to go back into a quarantine hotel, and South Africa's on a red list and it's been banned from a whole lot of countries. So, you know, for whatever reason, I think there's a much bigger reason why this is all happening, particularly with South Africa. But yeah, we're kind of now restricted again, and it's not just us. Everywhere, all across the world, we're seeing people who are going through some fairly difficult restrictions. But again, I like to go back to astrology, and if you look at astrology, it's all kind of energetically planned. It's just, it depends on whether you're going to believe nature or the narrative that gets put in the mainstream.
Well, they use astrology, don't they, as well? You find out. They use the dates and stuff. Yeah.
Definitely. Well, it's funny for me because things will happen sometimes after the fact, but I kind of have I mean, I'm a complete novice, and I've learned, self-taught myself some of it, which is probably wrong, but you know, they'll announce something like the South Africa thing, and you know, there would have been Saturn around, for instance. Saturn's restriction, it's kind of pulls back the rains kind of energy. And you know, and then they'll make an announcement where there's a restriction, and it's like, you know, that makes sense. So yeah, but that's on a collective level, and personally, you know, we all have our own personal journey to walk, and I know that so many people right now are in some way, shape or form, you know, going through their own stuff, and for a lot of people, it's a lonely walk. So yeah, I mean, Dave and I, it's that holding your hands out for humanity. I mean, that's really where we should be getting to, right? Is they want us to be divided, but actually we should be wanting to lift each other up and say, no, this is. And even those that don't want to hear us.
I think they want unrest, to be honest. I think that's what they're trying to go, because they can bring in martial law, to be honest.
Well, who knows? I mean, Dave always says to me, whatever's going to happen is going to happen. So you just got to let it unfold and try and be an observer rather than a participant. That's sometimes easier said than done, because you know, physically, in this physical experience, we have emotions and family and people that are involved in certain parts of the world that you can't see or whatever. But yeah, I think that it's going to happen. It's already planned.
Probably
it's
years
just
in advance as well.
Yeah, it's. I think what's more important is that individually we're creating the change, because actually that's how this thing changes, when we all do, you know, or when we do start actually.
That when they've changed it the last day or so, but when they were putting their posts out, you had the likes and the not likes, and every time I just went to look, because it just interested me, you could see that. Maybe it was like 500 or 2,000 or 3,000 thumbs down and 20 or 30 thumbs up. So, or even 100 thumbs up but 2,000 thumbs down. But they've now changed it so that you can't really see the no thumbs down. How amazing is that?
Oh.
Well, I bet you can see it on my channel. I bet you'll see the thumbs up and the thumbs down on mine. But on the news, they've managed to take all the thumbs down off, because they know we're not happy. And they've done that. It's disgusting.
Wow.
Taken off.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, that's what they've done.
Yeah. Yeah. My new thing is to try and keep the news watching to a minimum, because it really is, a lot of it is storytelling that they want.
Andrea, I was only going there to put my thumbs down.
They want to kind of
I was only going to the post to put my thumbs down, nothing else. Carry on.
Okay. Yeah. Well. Yeah. It's just it's such an exciting time to be alive, and I'm reminded that we have chosen yet to be at this time. So we all have we have a role to play, even if it is just keeping yourself sane and happy, and in the highest vibe you can. But yeah, we came here for this, so how exciting! But wild at the same time, because I think what has changed is, for me anyway, is the being okay with not knowing, because actually we don't know really what's going to unfold, and that's where you just have to kind of surrender.
Well, the part of you has to get on with your own life as well. You have to get on with your, you can't just, it's almost like, I'm standing here, my hands are up, oh, it's all coming at me, but you've still got to get on with your own life.
Yes.
But it's good that we explore, and that's the one thing I like, is we're all parts of a puzzle. Like I was just telling you about James in New Zealand and anxiety. He's part of the puzzle. The stuff you're doing is part of the puzzle. We can't all do the same bit, can we? We're all doing bits of it.
You see, for me, I think then all humans are, and this is where I caution myself to say, I'll use my mother as an example. She's going along with things, and I love her anyway. Sorry, I'm missing my point here. But that even she's a good person. Sorry, even she's a good person. And the little bit of goodness that she puts into the collective makes a difference. So instead of seeing her as, oh, she's not got it, so therefore she must be, soulless, or people like to use all these terms, but actually her little light, her little goodness is still goodness. It might just be what her soul has come here to experience, and I'm not in a position to know that. So this is where you can start being a little bit more compassionate, because I don't know what my mother, what her purpose is here. Was it just to be my teacher? My mother's been an amazing teacher to me.
I know, but sometimes you go past. Sometimes you go past these people, though, Andrea. That used to look up at them, and they were everything, and now they're kind of behind you. That's what happens when you wake up. You're gaining more knowledge, and they stopped.
Yeah, but possibly. Again, I don't. It's part of the journey for Dave and I. We're
looking for like-minded souls, aren't we?
I think what I like to think is just someone that you resonate with, and that depends on where you are on your journey. It depends on many factors, but yeah, someone that you resonate with. But I'm forever hopeful. For me, if I give up hope, then I must just give up, because I'd like to see that.
There's always so much to learn, though, isn't it? It never stops. Even in like you pick one subject, you get to there's masses to learn here, and there's always masses to learn and understand.
Yeah, well, this is where Dave's right. You got to seek the balance, right, between learning and then being still, because there's that.
Yeah, we're not used to that, are we? Especially when you've got kids. Your life is like, Daddy, Mummy, it's always, you've got to find that bit of time for yourself to think. You need to think.
Well, actually, not to think at all, possibly, because
maybe not. Well, if you've got that far, then you're quite whole, aren't you? If you don't need to think, you're there. But we haven't got any time to think and work things out. And what you're talking about took you quite a few years to get there. So yeah, that's what I think anyway.
Yeah. Well, I think that, again, it's the balance. The balance.
Do you want we've been going for an hour and 20 minutes. Do you want to, because I can hear your little boy.
Yeah, Dave's just playing with Easy, so I'm just going to pass him the phone so he can just take over the call.
Oh, thank you, Andrea.
Just hold on a second. Hold on a second.
Children is our future. Hello, little one.
Well, it's not been the easiest of 2 years for him, and the little child that I left good hard way with in 2019 has been so affected. But this is the journey he signed up for. Anyway,
he chose you as his parents.
It's as I said at the beginning, he's had 50, maybe more beds in the last 2 years, and it's been so unsettling. It's not the same as the first 2.5 years, that's for sure. So anyway, it's a bit of a tough thing for me a bit of pill to swallow as part of this journey. But I do my best, and
you're still here and you're still going.
And we still want to be, contributing to something better for the human story and for the creator. I think that, evil prospers when good men do nothing, and we need to do something. But as I said earlier, to be staring at all the theatre that they've offered us, and truth and half-truth and total bullshit, is to be missing the point, and that is the point is you are the center of the universe, and you need to be mindful and working on, centering to the middle of the cross, the center point of the cross.
Dave, so what do you? I know you're going to go. You're going to go in a second, aren't you? We've been going for an hour and 20 minutes, but so what do you think the future has for you?
I want to be on land, growing my own, putting roots in the ground, and becoming self-sufficient along with a community of people who value those sorts of real human living men and women sort of enterprises, rather than the one that seems to be increasingly corporatized and will come with certain expectations. So for me, there is this desire to be part of a new world that emerges from. I don't want to say the ashes, because I don't know that the modern world goes away anytime soon. It continues to do its thing for years to come. But those who decide that that's not for them, they'll hopefully be my neighbors, or people who are sharing ideas about how we thrive without much, if any, need for reliance on external systems. So that's where I'm at, and I hope to be able to contribute for a long time to come to helping people.
Yeah, you've taken on South Africa now, haven't you?
Yeah, well, we'll see. I'm hoping to do a road trip, actually. So I've been trying to. This friend, I won't say too much, but this friend is hopefully going to organize me a car soon, and I would like to try and get the support, because we kind of live hand to mouth. And thanks to my YouTube channel, Trinity for Africa, I have had supporters kindly, help me from America, Australia, Scandinavia, Europe, England, of course. People have supported me along the way these last 2 years to kind of stay on the road, and it's also compelled me to continue to offer something, from an activism point of view online. A lot of the work that I do isn't online. But I'd like to try and do like a sort of tour, and I keep vacillating about how I would name it, what would be the focus. Would it be a flat earth thing? How much would earth be a part of it? There are limits on what you can say in terms of, the current big lie. So, I am, with my flyer as well, cautious in terms of how I couch what I offer. I have had conversations with people who've become irate very quickly because they don't like to hear that the emperor is naked. But so short term, I would like very much, as summer's coming in South Africa, and assuming people aren't completely locked down again, which is obviously a possibility now.
It's nice in your picture. Just asking, where's that picture in South Africa then? Where's that beach?
That's in Durban, where I grew up actually, and that was probably taken a few months ago, and the weather in Durban is very mild through the winter, so you can actually have these really lovely, what could be like an English summer day in the middle of winter, and go down to the beach, and the water's quite warm because of the warm Indian Ocean current that I believe runs down the coast of Africa, or up the coast of Africa towards the Cape, and then heads towards what we call the Antarctic Ring, where it goes into a recycling pool, and what comes up right next to it on the other side, up the west coast of Africa past Cape Town, is a very cold and clean ocean. Very cold, very clean. And the explanation is it comes off the ice and whatnot. But I've stood on Cape Point at the end of Africa on one particular day where the weather was such and the conditions were such that I could see a clear and distinct line between the two oceans, the warm and dirty water coming down and the cold and clean water coming up. And I think this is one of the major ocean cleansing depots for our realm.
Well, they say it's very rough going around that Cape Horn, don't they?
Seas are very rough down there. That's because you've got these two competing Tauruses, I suppose.
I know where there's another one. I've been to it in Denmark. Yeah. It's where the North Sea meets the East Sea, just where the top of Denmark. And the North Sea is the dirty, aggressive one, and the East Sea is much calmer because it's more inland.
Okay. Yeah, isn't it on the fjords around Sweden, all of that, it's like an inland sea, and they don't have any tidal movement at all, apparently.
And then comes the sort of aggressive North Sea, and it laps up, and you can kind of go into the sea a little bit because the sand has gathered out a bit, but you can't swim in it and so forth. It's all got sand dunes around it. And then I found that right there, it's called Skagen. There's a pyramid up there as well.
Okay. Wow, pyramid.
In the sand dunes. But a lot of people don't know about.
There's pyramids all over the place.
And that bit of land my friend lives on is all just sand dunes. And it's got the biggest northern sand dune going across the top of Denmark. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Speaking of sand dunes, I was my second year in the army. I spent a lot of time in Namibia, and that's mostly the desert, Kalahari Desert. And I met a lady when I was doing activism in Greenwich with Harry John Smith Global one time. I met a lady from the same region, and she said, yes, don't you remember how you could see for like 100 kilometers on a clear day over the desert? It was one of those great kind of like, there's no curvature kind of evidence that people can see so far. And because of the desert conditions in the winter when the air is crisp and clear and what have you, you can see phenomenal distances.
I had this thing. I went to, I know we're going to finish in a minute, but I went to Silbury Hill the other day with Marie Wheatley. And basically, I just find this phenomenon really weird because they usually capture this over the sea. But when you're standing at the car park, the pyramid looks absolutely enormous. I actually zoomed in on Marie Wheatley, which is this silhouette in the middle of this big pyramid. And when you've taken the 25-30 steps to the fence, now the pyramid is over there in the corner of the field. As you get towards it, it gets small. It's still a huge thing, but it gets smaller. So when you're looking at the car, it looks like it's taking up the whole field. And then when you get to the fence, say you cut it into 4, it's in the left backhand corner of that field. It's weird how it could do that.
Okay.
So we don't really understand the place we live in. How can it be so big when you're 25-30 steps away and much smaller when you're that bit closer? It's just bizarre.
That is bizarre. Maybe
Yeah,
it has
it's
something
on
to do
my
with
video. It's on my channel if you want to see it. I've done it a few times because I find it was other people. We were at the car and they went, "Look at the size of the pyramid," and then we were like, "How could that be?" And then we walked back up to the fence and it got smaller. It's bizarre.
Wow. One of my favorite videos of yours is the one where you do this morph between Elvis and Donald Trump. I love that one.
I know that I don't understand it. I think that everything we watch on that is a cartoon, and they're always copies of other people. Like, you know, like if there's Tom Cruise, then there's about 5 people that look exactly like him, whether they're him or they're more cartoons. And then you've got Johnny Depp, you've got Brad Pitt. Loads of people look like Brad Pitt.
Yeah.
Tom Hanks. Oh, it's. But that freaked me out when I first saw that, because I never thought that he was going to look like Elvis Presley.
I love it. Yeah, I thought that one worked. That one worked for me. I sometimes tell people about that one just for, because again, it's like
uncanny likeness. I just find that really weird.
Yeah, we know that this thing is so staged. It is so Fifth Element kind of weird that anything is possible. So even the they live idea that there are others and other beings and so on, I accept all of the possibility of these things. There is something that I think I hold to, and that is that whatever creator there is, whatever God there is, whatever omniverse we live in, there is a master of all, and that master is above all the dark, light, brown, yellow, whatever you like, it's above all of that, and I think it has this. That's why we need stress not that the aliens are coming. We don't need to worry about these things. We need to have our own house in order. Noah's Ark is on your shoulders, and you need to be the one that does the preparation of the ark, the self. You are the vessel of God or whatever you believe in. So that vessel needs to be the ship of Noah. So I offer that as my kind of like parting thing to say, hey, that's what we need to be. That's what we need to be, is our own Noah, and spell it Know, Noah.
Noah. Yeah, well done. Yes, with the words, of course.
And be the Noah, but know that you are the one. You are the center, and the most important thing you can do is not acquiesce to the system, nor either be bullish of it, like you need to kind of beat it all down, because at the end of the day,
and we need to keep talking and keep connections and the whole thing. They don't like that very much, but that's what we need to do. And share.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you sharing your time with me, and
I appreciate you and Andrea as well. So thank you so much for spending this time. It's good to know that you're okay. And
yes, well, we landed and it was a bit of a nightmare, but we're hanging in there, and hopefully we can make a difference. And maybe we end up staying here long term. Maybe we end up back in the UK. We don't know anything for right now. But we got to try. I bet you try to come back. We'll see. But yeah, we've just been put back on the red list here, so we're not coming back anytime soon, because it's all 10 days in a Q hotel. Yeah, you won't be doing it at the moment. But is Andrea there? We'll say goodbye. Like, don't go. We say goodbye on the hangout, and then we'll say goodbye afterwards. But is Andrea there to say goodbye to everybody? She's just a bit busy right now, so all right, I'll say goodbye on her behalf, and I know she's enjoyed having the opportunity to chat. I'm sure she'd love to do it again sometime soon. Of course. It's been ages since we've actually had a chit-chat. We're Wi-Fi is sometimes a problem for us here, we've been, as I said, in 25 different locations at least, and so bouncing around, it's been very disjointed. She's had her own work to do on her own childhood trauma and experiences, because we've really been put to the sort of the mill. We've had our feet to the fire, as it were, and it puts in those situations we're put under quite extreme duress, and it has its own cost to pay, to be under that. Would it have all been different if you hadn't had your little boy? Would things have been different then, or do you think it would have been roughly the same? having a child that you're caring for all of the time, because there has never been a time when anyone else has cared for Alexander other than Andrea and I, it's a big responsibility, and it requires a lot of time, and I've had to put in probably more time than I would have felt was balanced. As I said, because we've had such a challenging few years, we haven't had the stability of a home and so on, or even certainty of the money to pay for a roof, the days ahead kind of thing.
Yeah, you've turned into a gypsy now, haven't you?
Yeah, and one
You're a gypsy,
who,
always travelling.
who doesn't have, and my family, my blood family, have disowned me entirely. So there's no willingness to support us, and
Well, my mum and dad think I'm mad, but it's the same sort of thing, really. But I'm not quite disowned. But I'm sorry about that, Dave.
My father would pay for a ticket back to the UK, but he won't give me a cent in support of being here, towards accommodation or food or anything like that. He won't pay for that. But of course, this journey has taken
my
me far
dad's
from
like that. My dad would expect me, if I'm really, really I don't know. In a way, it's good because you've got to do things yourself, haven't you? It's not their fault anymore. That part of it. You've chosen this life. But
yeah, absolutely.
But families are supposed to help each other out. So I don't know. It's a bit of a hard one, isn't it?
Yeah, but we know this is a narrow path, and for 5 years now, I have alienated my family by saying things that were unsayable in their mind. As much as I was trying to do it from a place of love, place of concern, place of wanting to alert people.
Yeah, I think that's why I say things, but really with my parents, because they're so set in their ways, you may as well just go up to the wall and talk to it.
Yeah, so 2016 was the last time I really was able to, because after I started speaking about Flat Earth, then that was it. So then that was when I really started talking about it, was that year, and so I don't have. Whereas if you know that the journey that I'm on is one which is in part to try and support other humans to realize their true self.
In a way, you're a bit like a martyr now, aren't you? Because I've set my life up. It's the same thing, on YouTube you can only say.
Maybe.
Well, on YouTube you can only say certain things. You can't say what you really want to, because if we did, we'd be saying a lot more.
Yes.
But you pick subjects that you can talk on. But I feel we're always trying to help people or tell people or show people myself. So I understand what you're talking about.
Yeah, so actually, my mother passed 10 years ago, and she was the inspiration for me to start looking at truth and so on. And I would, if I'm talking to her or thinking that she would be watching anything that I was doing, I would truly think that she would, given what she knows, be proud of her son. If she was still living, she'd probably not be.
She's the one probably helping you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, on the DMT experience, it was her voice that was calming me down. So that was So I think it's part of the journey, but it is. I thought it would only take a year or 6 months or something, and then my family would kind of come around. They go, "Yeah, of course we can see."
No, you're insane.
The Earth isn't spinning, but now it's like it's not that. So it's just part of. That's part of the journey. I'm not going to grumble about it. My family are where they are, and most people seem to have a similar experience where the majority of their family members are pretty much bought and sold.
Yeah, even my own children. My own children, a couple of them think I'm crazy. And they like the globe life they're in, the money-making, ego world. They like it.
Yeah, and they'll take the odd jab in the arm if they...
Yeah.
If they want to, but it's and again, it's like you can fret about that but I've kind of come to peace. I have met my dad for lunch while I've been here in South Africa a few times, but it's a cordial conversation, because I can't really say the things that I feel I should be saying. If
I try with my parents. It's just a nightmare. It's an absolute nightmare. It's horrible.
Yeah, so I even, you know, I would avoid, my mainstream friends don't contact me at all from here. My army veteran friends have shunned me pretty much to a man. You know, they're completely
I'm
asleep at
sorry.
the
I
wheel.
haven't.
No, well, I mean, the thing is that just prior to getting into Flat Earth, I'd published my book on being in the war in Angola, and so I was quite popular with veterans, particularly South African veterans. So I was hanging out with some of them and doing things, book tours, South Africa, you know, book signing things and stuff like that. That was 2014, 15, and then, you know, I started talking about, you know, 9/11 and then the Flat Earth, and that was it. And now, of course, they don't hear anything is wrong with, you know, you know.
The thing is, it's such an intense, this whole thing, if you try and explain it to someone, you're trying to go A to Z in a couple of sentences, and once you open your mouth, we can sound quite, what's the word? Because there's so much to explain, they think they're crazy. Because you've got to say so much to explain it. You can't just explain this in 2 minutes. The things that you find, you need time to explain it. And then they think they're crazy.
Yeah, they've switched off, you know, a long while before. And hey, that's obviously, you know, we can't like, we can only be, I think that the best I can do is to try and live by example. And, you know, those people who I can talk to and reach, I will. And those I can't lose too much sweat over that, because they will find it in their time if they are meant to, and whatever the sole purpose was, I'm not the one to.
But you know what? When I first was shown the flat thing, I remember going, oh, I'm not getting into all that, because I'd just done 9/11 and I was thinking I spent years on that, and I thought, I'm not getting into anything else. But about a month later, to debunk it, I went, and one of the first videos was water seeks its level, and I thought, oh, right, that was it for me.
Yeah.
I couldn't debunk it after that.
Well, once you know that that's like a killer kind of wow. If that's the truth, then nothing else I've ever learned from this system is probably true. And you know, that's something that I think about a bit these days, because there has been, you know, people they're arguing in the community about various things, and you know, in particular, it's like, it feels to me like, if when I realized that the heliocentric model had been completely devised as a deception, then I realized the power of the people who brought that deception to us. And then that meant for me, and that's why I was so passionate about telling people about it, is because it meant that everything that we'd ever been taught, you know, from any part of science, geology.
It's a lot, isn't it? Because you start off with, well, I'm a liberal or a Labour or a Conservative. You could say Democrat or what's the other one? Democrats and Republicans. So you start off like that, and then you go, well, I like, say, Manchester United or the Chicago whatever and whatever it is in America, or football or whatever. And then it's like, well, I like the colour blue and I like the colour red. You have to get rid of all of that. That doesn't exist the same anymore. You've got to be aware of what all that means. It means their system.
No, that's right. And so I think that what I was always aware of once I started hanging out with people in 2018, Flat Earthers, and then doing activism, was that there was still quite a lot of people who were holding on to certain belief systems that they had, you know, prior
like
to coming into Flat Earth.
That's another one of their games, that is.
What's that?
QAnon. You know, and they even had one in the 60s or 70s, and they were called White Dove. They've done this to us before. Right. People don't get it.
Yeah, but QAnon is post-Flat Earth, really. I mean, you know, so, but no, I mean, like in religious beliefs and scientific beliefs and so on, people are still holding on to pretty much an altered version of the same story they were given by the same deceivers who gave us the heliocentric model, who had the power to give us the heliocentric model.
Yes, you can't believe in any of those. I don't believe in any of those.
That the stories that we were told when we were 5 and 6 years old were the absolute truth, they just did everything after
Yeah,
that
like
to
the one you
try
just
and
said about the emperor with no clothes. They're all true.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, so you know, I feel that that's one of the things that again is going to be used to divide people, is that it's like, you know, you have to, there's a belief that I hold that is an absolute paramount belief that everybody has to hold, and I wouldn't like to be in a situation where I was pushing people to say that, because at the far end, the extreme end of that, you've got people pushing needles and saying, I believe that you need to do this, so you must take this thing. Well, that's all part of that same belief system, and I feel like anything that serves to demean whatever humans are and whatever our connection is to the Most High Creator, whatever demeans that is designed to demean that, whether it be the global warming agenda, global cooling agenda, the humans
Well, the way
are
I
bad in
see
any
is
way,
that
overpopulation,
whatever they're
things.
causing, this global thing, they caused it, and now they're going to make the people pay for it.
Yes. Well, yes, we
You
paid
know, all
for
the
every other world
disasters,
war.
all the things. When I found out about that Agent Orange, when they were spraying it in Vietnam and then putting the biohazard, which was just as horrible, all over the people's roads, and people were becoming really ill and towns disappeared. You think there was no difference. They were telling you they did it in Vietnam while they were secretly doing it on the people in their own country. They caused this.
Yeah.
Places to die,
Yeah.
people to evacuate.
Yeah, and
they cause it all, and then they blame it on the people.
Yeah.
You know, like they're
yeah,
messing around with our weather, aren't they? And all those scalar waves and things. They're doing all that. They can, you know, if you believe it or not, they can control hurricanes. So why don't they then? Why don't they sort them out and stop them creating millions of pounds of damage and whatever? They just use them. It's all part of their game.
Well, BP is causing a furore here in South Africa at the moment, because they're about to launch a series of, it's going to take days, and of these sonic booms in the ocean. These sonic booms are apparently designed to do some oil testing and stuff like that, but people are up in arms because apparently it's going to kill a lot of wildlife. These are very, very powerful booms. I haven't looked into it a lot, but it did make me think, well, if everything's electromagnetic,
it might cause
why are they
earthquakes.
putting in a series of pulses into the ocean there? Is it like an electrical, like you would do with a patient who is getting ECG, using those electrical things paddles to start their heart, to regulate their heartbeat? Is it something like that, There's all these sorts of things that are going on, and we have very little idea of. That story would only be known to the local people and stuff, but it's obviously a very big deal, given the story that's going down around it. So, yeah, I think they're messing with the environment for sure, in so many different ways, aside from your food and water and air and music and so on. It is in a way, it is what they call total war, on every front, and and it's assault on the Taurus, on you, on your universe. And that's why being in nature, being in forests, is and being in the ocean or being in water, having time for tranquility and to ground yourself, be barefoot for half an hour or more on the ground each day if you can, and the sun gazing if you know how to do that. These are the things that we need to be doing to kind of, now that we know we're under constant assault, you get rid of the microwave, you get rid of the TV, you reduce the Wi-Fi exposure, and you do other things that are to be clever, to say, yes, I know that these things are happening. I'm not going to be able to stop them. We know this from all the protesting that goes on to stop certain things. They continue anyway. So how do you mitigate that? And years ago, when I had a home, I was distilling all our drinking water, and that had good benefits. And you do these other things. You try and pull the toxins out of your body, the heavy metals out of your body, the parasites. These things, and to keep your system, your body clean, because then you don't run foul of becoming so so torsioned up, so tensed up that your Taurus system pops in some way. And it is quite sad that we've lost 3 fairly well-known names in the FE community in the last 2 or 3 months, you know. So in each of these cases, assuming they went down as we understand that they did, you know, stress may well have played a very important factor in some of their lives. Antonio Subrat seemed quite a highly strung guy, and you know, Macca was someone I considered to be a friend in the community, and he was you know, on edge a lot of the time. And what a hero, what a, you know, warrior he was. But he also you know, he also paid a heavy price for that, because he was, you know, 24/7. He was just flat out that guy. And there wasn't the balance. He was too much focused on one
spoke of the wheel. Some of it was a bit of drink, wasn't it?
Excuse me?
Some of it was a bit of drink.
What with Mac?
Who's Mac then?
Flat Earth Fokker.
Not him, the other one. The third one.
Oh, Steve Antonio.
No, that's 2. There's another one as well.
Rob Steven.
Oh no, it wasn't
Rob
him.
Steven.
There's another one. He was on, you know, with I can't think of any of their names now.
I'm not sure.
I can't think of any. I can see them, but I can't think of their names. He was the first one, so that's the 4th one. I'll tell you a bit more afterwards, but that one was drink as well. Yeah,
so you know, I mean, we some of us have made certain lifestyle choices, and you know, that's okay. But the thing is we know that if there is some kind of strange energy thing happening that is being passed off as some kind of virus, then we, you know, it could come to pass that your energetic systems are being tested, and if you aren't running you know, near optimum, then it might come at a, you know, the price that things don't seem to work. But stress is a killer. And
yeah,
an Indian lady told me on the beach the other day. She said, my father, they say he died of the thing, but he died of stress. For a year he sat at home frightened, and it killed him. So I think stress is a massive thing, and that's why we need to take good care of ourselves. You know, to be a truth warrior is one thing, and that's heroic. But, you know, we are called to take care of the temple before going out and taking care of the town.
Thank you for that, Dan.
So there you go.
Shall we, we've been going for nearly 2 hours now. Shall we finish on that note? You've said quite a lot, and for people to think.
Yeah. Cool. I hope that's been insightful. I do have a website called lovetruthsovereignty.com. lovetruthsovereignty.com. I'm trying to build on that at the moment, so if you want to check it out, please do. Trinity 4 on YouTube. I'll probably be on other platforms as well, but for now, that's where I'm at.
Well, thank you for that, and thank you to Andrea. It's been great talking to you. Glad to know that you're okay in South Africa.
Thank you.
I'll press the button here in just a second, but we'll say goodbye afterwards. But for Andrea, you and your little boy, and the chat room, and thank you very much for spending the time telling us.
Thank you. All the best.
Oh damn, I just cut it off at that moment. Oh no, I'm still going. I'm cutting it off now.